welcome to another episode of the Commander's Film Room. I'm your host, George Carney. We're here with my co-host, Mark Bullock. Mark, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, pretty good. Tired after all of that, but yeah, not bad.
Yeah, we were talking about our pre-show. I think both of us had about 4 hours of sleep, kind of feeling exhausted after a long and epic night. I felt it was a pretty enjoyable night with the NFL draft. Mark, today we're going to talk about Josh Conerly Jr., somewhat of a surprise pick for Washington, but I think it's a good utility player to add to our team. We're going to talk about his strengths and weaknesses today. Before we get into it, though, my question to you is just overall, macro perspective for the entire NFL. It seemed like a pretty different type of draft, right? Things were kind of unorthodox, from my opinion. What was your overall impression across the league in regard to the NFL, in regard to players being taken off the board? Shedeur Sanders still out there? Mike Green still out there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can't say I was too surprised with any of the outcomes. Like we knew like Mike Green had the allegations against him, and that could cause him to fall. And that was kind of my thinking was the film suggests he's too good to be there at 29 for Washington. So if he is there, then there's something to his allegations. And we saw him fall out. It kind of always felt like there was only one real first round quarterback in this draft, and Sanders was kind of being hyped up more for the name than anything else. And so, I think it kind of went as expected. And then there was a few surprises in the middle, like the Falcons trading back up for Pierce, especially. That felt very weird. And the kind of late trades in the kind of mid-20s was interesting. It just kind of bypassed Washington, unfortunately, I guess. But mind you, they said that they weren't going to trade if Conerly was there. So, I thought it was an interesting night. I don't think there was any huge surprises other than maybe, I guess, the Falcons kind of overpaying for that trade.
Absolutely. I definitely thought the draft was pretty interesting. The NFC East as a whole, I think, improved as well. Got Tyler Booker for the Cowboys. Some say it may have been a reach at 12, but he's probably the best guard in the draft. He was going to the Cowboys, solidify that line. Jihad Campbell goes to the Eagles, solidifies that team as well. And the Giants add Abdul Carter as well as Jackson Dart. So sitting there at 29, Mark, there are plenty of options on the board. We saw Mike Green potentially there. Donovan Eziraki was there. Will Johnson was there. Josh Conerly's nothing to do that. We obviously thought he was a high talented player. We projected him in the 20s. Most of us did. My thoughts are, I guess my question to you is, what are your overall impressions of the pick? I know you're probably pretty happy with it, but would you have gone in a different direction at 29?
I kind of expected them to go in a slightly different direction, but I guess retrospectively, it makes a lot of sense that they didn't. When you look at the amount of defensive ends still on the board and the amount of cornerbacks still on the board, there's a lot of good players still available. So you think one of those guys might still be available at 61, or if any other kind of trades happen. Whereas the talent level at tackle kind of drops off pretty significantly at this point. And there were some later tackles that were good and could have offered something. And Washington had some interesting guys in, like Ozzie Trapillo and Anthony Belton. Some other guys were interesting as well. But there was a drop-off after Conerly, whereas there's still quite a few good defensive ends and corners on the board. So it kind of made sense to take, especially as they kind of said Conerly was their best guy available, take that guy, especially as there is a drop-off. And you have a good chance of landing one of the other, the good defensive ends that isn't quite so much of a drop-off from a guy you would take right now.
I agree. I think I totally agree with what you just said, right? I feel like with Josh Conerly, the tackle class and his tackles across the league, historically speaking, if you look at data, starting left tackles that's kind of solidifying the league are typically taken in the first round, right? They're at a higher talent level. They do not go in free agency. You have to get one in the draft. So I think getting Josh Conerly is going to add to our offensive line, solidify our offensive line for foreseeable future. Looking at the second and third round, we definitely have some cornerbacks and edge perspectives available. So we'll see how the draft shapes up. So without further ado, let's jump on into it, Mark. So we're going to look at our actual draft film breakdown. We have about an hour worth of Josh Conerly film, so thank you, Mark, for grinding late into the night in regard to that. Let me put the music on. I'm going to pass the mic over to you. Give it a shot.
Cool. So Josh Conerly Jr., 6'5", 315-ish, pretty long arms. There's different measurements on the arms. Some I think at the combine it was 33.5. At his pro day it was 34.25. And it does feel like everywhere you've seen all the combine numbers are a little bit low this year, which is odd because it's just measuring arm length. You'd think it should be pretty universal, but it wasn't. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, say 34-inch arms, and certainly length doesn't seem like it's an issue for him. We'll say that. Okay. But the thing that stands out first and foremost is the athleticism. He's got really quick feet. He's a really good athlete. You can see he's quite a fluid mover, and that really helps him in all facets of the game, but especially pass protection. So we'll start with this rep here. I think everyone's probably seen it by now. It's Abdul Carter, number 3 pick in the draft to the Giants, who he'll have to face twice a year. He's coming off the edge with a speed rush, and we've got Conerly here at left tackle. And it's all about being able to be quick, getting out there. You engage quickly with Carter, cut off that speed. Carter tries to dip and bend around the edge, but Conerly shows he's able to get low without lunging. He keeps his weight over his feet rather than lunging at Carter. So he's able to bend and get low, bend at the knees, get low, stay with Carter. And not a lot of tackles against Carter would kind of lose this here. Their hip would fly open and Carter would be able to bend and turn that corner pretty sharply. Conerly stays engaged, keeps with him, and ends up running him by the quarterback. Now the quarterback ends up getting hit and what have you by other players, but that's not Conerly's fault. So you can see straight away there is a pretty high level of athletic ability, especially going against Abdul Carter, who is one of the most athletic and probably the best pass rusher in the draft. So this is another example against Carter, but this is with a slightly different set. We'll come to his sets in a little bit more, but this is what's known as a quick set, where we saw just a minute ago he kind of dropped and back in a more vertical set previously. This time you use a quick set to kind of mix it up and catch a pass rusher off guard. So instead of dropping backwards, you step towards the defender and you kind of try to disrupt what their plan is and catch them by surprise. So he tries to do that here, which can be risky, especially against a real speed guy like Carter, but he's got the athleticism to make it work. So you can see off the snap, he takes his first step out towards Carter rather than sinking back vertically. And he's trying to disrupt that timing, and that makes Carter engage with him a lot quicker, and he's able to cut him off. And Carter still tries to get to that edge, but again, you see that ability to stay engaged, to keep running him by the quarterback. The quarterback gets quite deep here, but he's able to step up in the pocket. And at this point, this is a pretty well blocked play. The quarterback should be fearing for his life with this guy coming off the other side and getting rid of the ball pretty quickly here. And he doesn't. Conerly keeps staying engaged with Carter, gets him to the ground, and it's only when the quarterback kind of gets wrapped up by other people that Carter joins in. So it was a pretty good rep from Conerly. Yeah.
Mark, quick question for you. So I'm learning. I definitely, I love football. I watch it all the time, but I'm learning right on the fly right here. So are you kind of insinuating that offensive tackles kind of have their own chess game as well? Like they take different steps to counteract the defensive ends? Okay, interesting. Okay.
Oh yeah. We'll get onto that. I've actually got a few reps of that, like after this play, I think, where we'll talk about, or after a few plays. I'll start on the athleticism first, that we'll see here, and then we'll talk about the sets that you get into. So, yeah, this one is more about the athleticism. So the ability to redirect and adjust to inside rushes. So again, this is Abdul Carter, and he's really quick, and he's able to change direction and dive inside like he does here. And Conerly is quick enough to. A lot of tackles would struggle to, they'd be rushing outside to try to cut off a speed rush and then suddenly have to stop their momentum and redirect back inside to try to cut off the inside rush. Conerly shows here that he's perfectly capable of, he gets his 2 kick steps outside. He's cutting off that speed. Carter stands up and tries to dive inside, and he's able to quickly redirect, get back inside, cut him off, and wash him down the line and keep that quarterback protected, and the quarterback can kind of roll out and away from it. So another good rep, again, showing that athleticism, the quickness of feet, the ability to change direction. Another example here, now that we'll get away from the Abdul Carter stuff, we'll look at some other games. This one's Michigan. Again, the guy's going to try to go upfield and then dive inside. And again, you see the quickness of feet, the ability to go work outside, redirect, come back inside, wash the guy down the line, give the quarterback a chance to step up and work around the play. And the quarterback ends up taking all the way for the touchdown as well. So
imagine if that was Jaden Daniels, right? And then
exactly.
and then one more thing. Sorry to interrupt you, Mark.
Yeah, no,
I think the immediate takeaway from, at least for me, from watching Conerly and hearing all the different reports is the athleticism. The athleticism shines through the tape, right? It kind of pops off of the tape. The fact that we see these quick sets. We hear about the 10-yard split being the fastest at the NFL Combine. We saw a couple of plays where he's actually even taking the ball as a running back. So it's promising to see that he has that athleticism. I think the fan base is also encouraged because there's a straight apples to apples comparison as well, right? Abdul Carter gets drafted at number 3 overall. We're in theory, nervous about him coming to the Giants. We see him being neutralized on film. So there's a positive regard to that.
Yeah, and the big part about that is and what I was wanting to show is that the athleticism is functional athleticism. So it's not just being a good athlete for the sake of being a good athlete. It translates to football functionality. And this is kind of what I'm showing with that one, where you can see him change direction, redirect inside. And another example of that is this stunt here, where the defensive end is going to stunt inside and the defensive tackle is going to loop around to the edge. So he's going to have to change directions 3 times on this play because of this stunt. So he starts working outside, thinking defensive end's going upfield. Then he's going to come back inside, thinking it's an inside move. And then he has to again change back outside once the defensive tackle loops to the edge. So again, we'll see he starts outside, redirects back inside, gets his hands on the defensive end, shoves him into the guard, and then is able to quickly identify, okay, this is a stunt. There's a defensive tackle looping around, redirect back outside, get his hands on the guy, lock him up. Again, good functional athleticism, the ability to redirect multiple times within a play. You see stunts are a heavy part of the NFL nowadays. Everyone runs stunts up front. It's unless you have an elite guy, it's very rare that you just see one pass rusher over and over and over again.
To manufacture a pass rush.
Exactly. So that functional athleticism translates.
And then, Mark, really quick, what I think is really powerful so far from the film, we're seeing tape against Penn State, Abdul Carter. We're seeing the tape against Michigan. We saw Jack Sawyer coming against Josh Conerly as well. He's being in the Big Ten. You are battle tested against some pretty good pass rushers.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that was something that I think they talked about was Adam Peters talked about, like in the Big Ten, they faced a lot of good pass rushers. Michigan, Ohio State have good guys. Obviously, Abdul Carter with Penn State. In this game against UCLA, there was Femi Oladejo that is a potential commander's target in the second round. So there's a lot of good players that he faced off against, and so he is battle tested. So we talked earlier about the differences in sets and like the quick sets and stuff like that. This is something that you don't see a lot of really young tackles be very good at because it's quite complex in the amount of different sets that you have to have. And I think the casual fan doesn't really appreciate what goes into it. So typically they just think you're just kick sliding and you're getting back, but you do it at different angles. Sometimes you're doing kind of a 45-degree angle from the line of scrimmage. Sometimes you're going more vertical to get more depth to cut off speed. And I talked about quick set, where you take a step straight at the guy rather than dropping backwards. This one is kind of a hybrid of that. This is, I don't know if there's a more advanced name for it. I call it a surprise quick set, where he takes his first step back like he's doing a normal set, and then suddenly he leaps forward and kind of surprises the guy with a quick set. And so this is one that you don't see a lot of young tackles, especially like as I talked about, Conerly only turned 21 in November, so he's a really young tackle. You don't see a lot of the young tackles vary their sets like this, but he does this really well, and you can see the effectiveness this has. So at the snap of the ball, he takes that first step back like he's taking a normal set. That tells the defensive end, okay, I can go as normal, I can charge up the field. But then he's able to redirect and instantly step straight towards that defensive end, get his hands on him, and take him by surprise. And then the defensive end is like, oh, okay, now you're here. Now you're in my face. What am I doing? Now my initial rush plan is completely taken off. What have I got to do? I've got to redirect. I've got to try to do something else. And he decides to try to go inside, and he kind of loses balance, and then Conerly kind of throws him to the ground and falls on top of him. And then the quarterback gets his receiver murdered with a terrible throw, but we'll go away from that.
Exactly.
So, and this is just another example of it against Michigan. This time, it's the exact same idea. He takes that one step back and then jumps forward at the guy. So surprising him, you see the one step back, the defender starts to work upfield thinking it's a normal set, and then suddenly jumps at him, closes the gap, gets his hands on him real quick, and you can see, there's a size difference here. He's a big guy. This defensive end isn't the biggest guy, and he locks him up, and he's going nowhere really. So that's some kind of advanced sets that you see from him. It's really nice to be able to see him have a varied set for a guy so young. You don't see that a lot come into the league, so that speaks to a technique ability and also mental awareness of, I need to be able to have different things to throw at rushers to catch them off guard. So I think it's a really promising thing. His feet are a real strength of his. So
and Mark, sorry to interrupt you. So to the best of your knowledge, is it kind of like it's autonomous, right? These players he can do this footsteps any way he deems fit, right? Almost like a pass rusher. They can do like, I'm gonna do a club this move, I'm gonna do a rip this method. He's like, I'm kind of tooling with my defensive end across from me. So he's potentially doing.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Got it. Okay.
So you as a tackle, you have two main weapons. You have your feet with your set and how you kind of, if you give yourself space, if you go towards the guy and eat up that space and kind of catch them off guard. So it messes with the timing of a rusher. And then you have how you use your hands, and you can kind of do the same thing. It's whether you go quickly and aggressively with your hands, whether you kind of wait, you keep them low, you keep them high, you go one hand, you go two hands. So you have lots of different weapons to try to counteract and disrupt pass rushers and what they're trying to do. And you don't see guys coming into the league that young with really good feet, not just the quickness of feet that he obviously has with his athletic ability, but the different sets that he has, the kind of advanced technical side of it is really good, really promising to see. And when you talk about a lot of tackle prospects that can convert to guard, a lot of the times the two reasons you convert a tackle to a guard is either he doesn't have the length to survive on the edge, or he doesn't have the feet to survive on the edge. And neither of those are an issue for Conerly. And in fact, the feet are a real strength for him. And it's not just he's got quick feet. Like Brandon Coleman has really quick feet, but he doesn't have the variety of sets that Conerly has. So Conerly's got not just quick feet, but advanced technique with his feet, which is really good to see. So the other part I talked there that is really useful to have is hands and timing with punches and stuff like that. And that is another part of his game that is a real strength. And it really stood out to me was how well he times his punches. He often, sometimes you'll see him, as I said, kind of jump towards a guy and quick set and catch him by surprise. But sometimes you'll see him drop back more vertically, wait for the guy to come to him and find the right time to land that punch to really disrupt their rush. And so this is a really good example of that punch timing. So we'll drop back here again against Michigan. He takes that more vertical set. You can see he's taking more steps back. And what we have here is this pass rusher is going to try to use a cross chop move. So he's going to raise this inside arm and try to chop across Conerly's body to knock down the outside arm and clear a path to the edge. But Conerly is aware of this. He sees this coming, and what he sees is the hand going up to chop across, and he notices that that's a chance to attack, and he sees the chest is exposed. And you can kind of see it here. The guy's got both of his hands low. His chest is really exposed. So as he raises his hand up, you can see his chest is completely exposed, and that's when Conerly's like, well, I'm going to take that chance to fire my hands. I'm going to hit that chest. Your cross chop's not going to matter because I'm going to stun you with the power of my punch. And that's what he does. He hits his chest. That hand placement is absolutely perfect, outside peck of the good defensive end's arm, and you knock him back, you stun him, you cut off his path to the edge. His cross chop doesn't work because you've stunned him with the punch, and then you lock him up, and it's a good play, and you're off to the races. So
Mark, that was an incredible breakdown. That was awesome. I learned a lot, especially right there. It's just such a chess game. What I'm taking away from this is he's technical, right? He's technically sound at 21. That's very promising at a young age. His criticism potential, he was a 5-star recruit coming into Oregon and going into college. But what's promising about him is I guess the critique is that he's not necessarily the strongest tackle in the draft right now, but being at 21, he still has a much more room to grow, so he could become very powerful later on. But having the technical aspects right now is very promising.
Yeah, and I've got some stuff on the struggles with power. We'll get to that, but I'll just run through a few more examples of his
Sure.
punch timing. So this is in that same game, but against a different defensive end this time. Last time it was against 42. This time it's against 91 over here. And you see again the same thing. It's not the same move, but he sees an exposed chest and he times his punch really well. And a criticism I had of Brandon Coleman was he uses two-handed punches, and two-handed punches can be really good if you time them well and you hit to the chest of the guy, because it can really disrupt them. You're throwing your whole weight behind it. But if you use both hands and you kind of it tends to make you lunge forward and you can be off balance, and it can be really easy for a guy to kind of swipe with one hand and knock both your hands away, and then you've got nothing to recover with. But if you time it well, they do work well. And so here you see both hands fire at the same time. He times it well. You can see again he's attacking an exposed chest. He hits both hands to that chest, and you can see he knocks back that defensive end and kicks him outside. And so even though the defensive end does get that swipe across and knocks those hands down, because he landed that punch, he knocks him wider. So you can see the defensive end actually started inside and has gone wider because of it. And then by that point, he's having to recoup and try to get back inside, and Conerly's able to replace his hands and get control of the block. So again, it's really good hand timing with his hands. Another example here, this time against Ohio State, just to prove it's not the same one game. You see again, he's patient with his hands. This guy uses a little stutter move, and we've talked about stutter moves with pass rushers before. They can be effective because the idea is you try to stop a tackle's feet and then explode past him. But Conerly, as we talked about, has really good feet, so he's able to start and stop with that stutter move. And at which point that stutter move becomes a weakness for the defender, because as you can see, again, the chest is kind of exposed, and Conerly just gets his hands on him, times his punch really well, and locks him up. I think I have one more on the punch timing. Yeah, we'll do one more on the punch timing. This time, who's this against? I can't remember. Can't tell what that helmet
Washington Huskies.
Yeah, it's Washington. Yeah, you're right. So, but again, it's the same idea. He's timing his punches really well. Again, you can see there's a big kick slide. He's trying to get out to the guy. Guy uses that stutter again, and again keeps that chest exposed. So he fires his hands, gets both hands on the chest. Now again, the guy does knock those hands down, but he goes backwards doing so because of that the strength of that punch, and that allows Conerly to reset his hands, get hold of the defender, and this turns out to be a good fight. They put on a good battle, but Conerly wins it for the most part. At this point, the ball should be out where the quarterback needs to be going, and instead he runs into a pressure. But Conerly's done a good job at that point.
So cool.
Yeah,
Mark, my question to you. So he just seems like he has great lateral movement, great arm technique, has a little bit of punch behind him as well. Where do you see his fit in Washington? Obviously, he played 900 snaps at left tackle at Oregon. I think the logical solution would be right tackle. I feel like it would be kind of balance up, have two bookend tackles. But there has been a little whispers about guard. Is that a waste of his talent, in your opinion? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd put him at tackle.
Okay.
As I say, when you move a guy inside the guard, it's typically for one of two reasons. Either he doesn't have the length to survive at tackle, or he doesn't have the feet. And clearly he has the feet, and the length hasn't really been an issue. So I'd put him at tackle. I think his weaknesses we talked about with strength would I said we'll get to those shortly, but I think that would be more exposed at guard, where you're facing bigger, stronger defensive linemen than you do on the edge. So I'd put him at right tackle. I think that's where he'll end up, and I think Coleman will slide into left guard.
I agree.
What was this one? Oh yeah, so this is actually one more to do with the punch timing, but it shows good hand usage again. So this time is another cross chop. It's again, he's avoiding cross chop this time against Ohio State. I think this is
Sawyer, I believe. Jack Sawyer.
Yeah, I can't remember which one it is. It's one of the Ohio State defensive ends that could be a high draft pick this tonight possibly. And so he comes across and he's going to try to cross chop. You can see that inside hand again is trying to raise and chop across to clear a path to the edge. Conerly sees it coming and quickly strikes, lands that punch to the chest, gets hold of him and knocks that defender out. Now, again, I talked about when you lunge with you can tend to be a little bit lungy if you fire both hands, and you can see his center of gravity is not over his feet. So he is lunging a little bit, leaning a little bit. But because he landed that punch and he's knocked that guy back, and you can see the defender's not in a position where he can swipe or clear that and get away from it. So he can't take advantage of this lunge. So Conerly is safe to lunge at this point. And then he's able to quickly, once the defender has to kind of back out of it, and again, he started inside and has now been widened a lot more, then Conerly is quickly able to reshuffle and get his feet back underneath him and is quickly back into a decent spot, but still engaged in the block, still got a hand on the chest of the defender and locks him up. So. And
Mark, sorry to interrupt you, just to be so I don't spread misinformation. That was actually Total Monal. That was a JTT. Okay. And which is actually even more impressive because JTT over the last 3 years has, I'm just doing the numbers right now, 42 games started. So he's known for being a more of a refined product, and Josh Conerly did a pretty good job against him.
Yep. And you know, he's done a pretty good job against pretty much every pass rusher we've seen so far. Yep. This is back against Penn State. I talked about two-handed punches can be a little bit risky at times. I just wanted to show that it's not all just two-handed punches and well-timed punches. He does have the ability to use independent hands, and when I say independent hands, as I mentioned, if you go with both hands, you have the chance of A, lunging at a guy, but B, having both hands swipe down with one move. What you'll see here is he goes with his outside hand first and keeps his inside hand ready to strike. And when his outside hand gets knocked down, his inside hand is instantly ready to replace. And so you'll see that here. He comes up to the guy and he has both hands ready. You can see he goes first with his outside hand. You get a cross chop from the defender. He's actually able to knock that outside hand down. And as that outside hand's getting knocked down, his inside hand is ready to replace instantly. And so he's able to get there. Now, the defender does a good job of avoiding that contact, but to avoid that contact, he's had to go wider and gets knocked wider and gains width, actually. So you can see he's quite a ways away from the quarterback here, especially if you compare it to the other side of the field, right? So, and that gives Conerly a chance to, again, readjust, reset his hands, replace and regain control, get back in front, and then lock him up and win the rep. So you see good independent hand usage there. And then just one more on hand technique. This is just a nice technique to have in the bag. When I talked about length being an issue for some guys, I don't think it's an issue for him. But you see longer pass rushers. Some pass rushers have like insane, like Montez Sweat had like 36-inch arms when he was in Washington. Well, he still has 36-inch arms. I don't think they shrunk, but you see those guys with incredible length. They can get into you and they can use that long arm rush where they just adjust to one arm, use that length and drive you backwards. And you have to be able to have an answer for that, because you find these pass rushers that have ridiculous length. And as I say, Conerly doesn't have bad length. He's got about 34-inch arms, which is about what you want. But you still will face guys that do have better length than that. And so you see here, this is a defensive end that is aligned inside with a linebacker walked outside, but he's going to widen outside and he's going to get into a long arm rush. Conerly does a nice job taking away his initial plan. So the guy has to then transition to a long arm, but as he tries to transition to that long arm where he's got his inside arm on the pec, Conerly swipes down. I'll maybe just rewind that back because it's a real nice technique.
It is.
Before he gets set up, he swipes down with that inside arm. So you can see here, he's just starting to extend that arm, and he's going to try to transition from working wide to driving Conerly backwards. And Conerly can sense that happening. Right here, you can see that outside foot steps in, and he's ready to try to bull rush him in with that long arm. And Conerly can sense that happening. He can see that elbow starting to extend. And so Conerly brings his own hand, which is on the shoulder pad, down and swipes down. You can see, there you go. There's the full extension of the arm from the defender. And Conerly takes his hand off so that he can then chop down himself. And you can feel that defender kind of leaning on that arm. And that's the disadvantage of a long arm rush. You have to really lean on a guy, and you can see he's leaning. Where's his center of balance? Like, his feet are out here, his body weight's here. If you are able to clear that hand, he suddenly has no way to balance. And that's exactly what Conerly does here. Knocks that hand down, defender falls to the ground, Conley falls on top of him, and it's a really good rep.
And then, Mark, just my initial takeaway from I know we have highlights and areas of growth later on in the film, but just in this first part of the film, it just looks very easy to him, right? I feel like he's just a great athlete. Maybe it's that marriage of being technical and being a great athlete as well, but it just seems like he has everything under control. So the quarterback has plenty of time. Dylan Gabriel has plenty of time in the pocket, so I'm pretty impressed so far.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about him. The only real weakness that I saw in his game was dealing with strength and power rushes. Now, that is a concern. In the NFL, you face a lot more power rushes than you do in college, and you face a lot more consistent power rushes than you do in college. You face a lot more bigger guys that have got more ability to transition from speed to power, and so he's going to have to bulk up a little bit. He's going to have to find a way to develop some lower body strength and build an anchor so that he can drop into that anchor and absorb some of that power and redirect some of those power rushes. And we'll see here, this is the first one where I think it's Abdul Carter is actually going to rush upfield and then transition speed to power and get into his chest and start driving him back. Now, he doesn't get like completely bulldozed over, and it's not the worst rep in the world. But you can see he's tried to get out quickly to him. We saw that kind of quick set again. He's tried to close that gap quickly, and Carter kind of anticipated that. So he gets his hands inside. You can see both hands for Carter are inside on the chest of Conerly, and then he's transitioning from that speed to power straight away. And you can see he starts to drive him back, and you can see Conerly doesn't really drop an anchor. He doesn't get his feet sorted out. He can't get his pad level under Carter and get low so that he can then redirect that power upwards and stop him. He just gets constantly driven back towards the quarterback. Now, the quarterback doesn't help by having to scramble around and running up in the pocket and moving all over the place. But and Conerly's not the reason this is a bad play for Oregon. And in fact, it turns out okay that the quarterback scrambles away.
I was going to say that.
But it shows that there is a potential weakness to power there. And like Abdul Carter is not known for being a power rusher. Yes, he's got good speed, but he's not known for being a power rusher. And you can kind of see that quite a lot with different rushers. I think this one is Sawyer.
That's right.
And this time, Sawyer initially kind of works outside, like maybe he's expecting a chip or he's possibly trying to guard someone in coverage, and then joins the rush slightly delayed. So I think he catches Conerly a little bit by surprise. You can see kind of, I don't know whether he's anticipating a run and it's a down block or something like that from the tight end, and then he's like, oh, I need to go rush. But Conerly comes out here and he gets in a not terrible position, but Sawyer kind of just throws his body at him. There's not really a technique. It's just kind of, I'm just going to throw my whole weight at you. But Sawyer is, 260 or something like that? Whereas Conerly is 310. He should be able to absorb this hit. And you can see the feet aren't really well set for it. He's not anchoring down. He's getting knocked over basically, and you can see he loses balance. He gets driven back and gives up kind of a pressure there. Again, it's not a sack, so it's not the end of the world. But there is a susceptibility there to getting knocked back.
I was going to ask you, Mark. So obviously we want to be critical of our pick. We want to be objective with our pick. He had about 500 pass snaps. I think he only gave up one sack on the entire year. But we are seeing some of him getting some pushback, some level of a concern. I guess my question to you is this a major concern to you? Like, what, on a scale from 1 to 10, how nervous would you be about this in regard to his power and being able to defend this?
I'm not massively concerned. I don't think it's something that is like, oh, he's going to be a bust because he can't handle power. It's something that might cause him issues in his first year or two.
I can see that.
He's going to take some time. Like all young offensive linemen do take some time to adjust to the NFL. And even the best guys take some time, and they take some time to adjust to the kind of the NFL weight room and the
meal plans and all that stuff.
And all that kind of stuff, and learning the right way to gain muscle mass. And so I'm sure in like a year or two's time, this is not going to be an issue for him. He'll put on more weight. He'll get stronger. He'll build better core muscle and lower body muscles. It might take him a little bit, and they might have to help him out a little bit in his first year. But that's fine. Like you can do that. And He's not going to be a left tackle where he's going to be facing the absolute elite and guarding the blind side. He's going to be right tackle. They've got a stud at left tackle in Tunsil, which means they can still provide help to Conerly without sacrificing too much. And they're still going to be benefiting compared to where they were last year. So I think you take that downside as part of the reason why he's not a top 10 pick as opposed to a first round pick. Like
it's growing pains. He's a puppy right now, right? He's 21 years old, which is ridiculous, right? By the time he gets to his second contract, 25, 26, and it's natural human development. You don't become fully developed till you're 25 or 26. So he's gonna have 5 years in the NFL program. He's gonna be a beast. I'm really excited about this, actually.
Yeah. So one more on the struggles with power, and then one slight upside with it. So this is that same guy we talked about earlier with the long arm rush. This actually happened before the play we saw earlier, where he had that nice snatch technique to snatch that arm down and knock him off balance. I think this is why he anticipated it. So this play came before that. The guy gets into a long arm rush. You can see he lands that inside arm, and Coleman again tries to do that same technique we saw, but he can't quite clear that arm. He tries to knock it down from the elbow, but the guy's got his arm locked in really nicely, and that allows him to, you can see he takes away his outside arm. He just fully transitions into that long arm rush, and he's able to drive Conerly back and towards the quarterback. Now, again, the quarterback's still able to get away a pass, and it's kind of a dangerous one, but he's still able to get away a pass. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like, oh, we couldn't possibly play him because of this, but it's just, these are the kind of growing pains that he might go through in his rookie year. And you need to be ready to kind of deal with those. But, so there is, the power and...
It's Isaiah Stewart right here from Michigan.
So
Josiah Stewart, sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, so the strength could be somewhat of an issue for him early on, but you do see the upside is there, the technique is there, and he just needs to gain some power. And you can see this is Josiah Stewart, who's a bit of a smaller rusher who does have quite a bit of explosiveness and power in him. And because he's smaller, he kind of gets under guys and into guys a little bit better than some others. So he kind of surprises you with power, and you can see he transitions into a power rush here off the edge, gets into Conerly's chest and starts to drive him back. But you do see Conerly do a nice job. This is a better job, widening his feet, dropping an anchor, resetting his hands. Now Stewart still gets a little bit under him and still able to drive him back a little bit, but he's able to withstand that and absorb that. So you can see at this point, he's kind of stopped that bull rush. And yes, he gave up a few yards, but the quarterback still has a few yards of distance from him. So you can give up a few yards, and you kind of often have to when a guy goes to a bull rush to be able to absorb it and redirect their power. So that's just to show that there is potential there for him to still improve and get stronger. The technique is there in theory. He just needs to put on some more muscle, which maybe a few months in an NFL offseason will help. Probably a year or so will definitely help. And then you've got a very, very good pass protection tackle that will be able to be a bookend on the right side, and potentially in the future you talk about maybe replacing Tunsil on the left side if everything goes well. So
Mark, quick follow-up to you. I know every player is different. Everyone has their own different areas of growth. Let's assume that Conerly goes to right tackle. Would that be a large adjustment for him? Like, I know there's always consideration of left to right. You're kind of doing the mirror of what you'll be doing on the left-hand side, but it is a little bit uncomfortable. Do you think that's an area of concern for you, or do you think with the off-season it should be okay?
It's not really an area of concern. He's young enough. That it's not like there's so many banked reps at playing left tackle. It's not like he's a 30-year-old left tackle that's spent his entire career playing left tackle. He's young enough to transition. You see quite a lot of guys go through that transition to switch to the right side, and it is a bit kind of trying to learn how to do something backwards. But it's not like he's going to forget that he has these techniques and the footwork and the hand placement and the timing of stuff. That's all going to be there. It just needs to rework how to do it backwards. And for some guys that comes really easily. For some guys it doesn't come that easily. I assume they've probably worked with him and stuff. And there's a few reps here in the run game. We'll get onto the run game in a minute.
Looking forward to that.
And he Oregon quite often used an unbalanced line, so he shifted over to the right side.
Okay.
And I've actually got a rep of that in a minute. So it's not like he's completely new to playing on the right side. But there will be an adjustment period for him, I'm sure. But he practiced it a little bit in the Senior Bowl, and I don't foresee it being a huge issue for him. So yeah, we'll move on to the run game here, and there's quite a lot to like about him as a run blocker. That you might think the issue with strength and pass protection might translate to the run game as well. Actually, he's actually quite good and quite strong in the run game, and it's easier to assert your strength when you're going forward as a run blocker as opposed to going backwards as a pass protector.
Exactly.
So it doesn't translate as badly as some people might think. As in the run game, he actually brings a fair bit of thump, and we'll see that here. So this first play, we're just seeing him down block this defensive tackle. It's a GT counter scheme, which we've seen a lot with Washington under Kingsbury. Both the right guard and the right tackle, they're going to pull to the left side of the line. So Conerly's job is to wash down this side of the line, and he does a really nice job on this defensive tackle. You'll see it here. He washes him down, gets him down the line, gets him out of the play. The running back's able to come through. And then what I really like about this play is he turns his head and he's like, well, I've blocked my guy out of the play. What can I do now? And he starts jogging and he thinks, okay, this play is sort of done. And somehow this running back here manages to stay on his feet, bounce off the back of this guy.
Wow.
Doesn't go down. And so Conerly sees that and is like, okay, I'll run in and help. So he stays on his feet. He's like, okay, we're still going. Here he is. Here's Conerly. He's like, okay, I'll come over and join in the pile and try to push you forward for an extra few yards. So you like the desire and the athleticism and the willingness to go and try to be a good teammate and help a guy get forward. This is where I talked about unbalanced line. So he shifted over to the right side here, technically a tight end, but almost like a right tackle. The tight end's now playing left tackle, and he's got another tight end outside of him. And we're going to do the same kind of thing. We're going to down block this big defensive end or big defensive tackle. And then this time we're going to work up to the linebacker on the second level. And the whole idea is you're creating a wall here. You're trying to steal off this inside and create a lane for the running back. So we'll see that here. He gets a little shove on this guy, helps the actual right tackle secure that block, and then he works up to the second level, picks up that linebacker, shows some good strength, gets into him, starts driving him backwards, and you can see he's sealed off that lane inside for the pullers on this side to clear out this way, and suddenly the running back's got a lane, and Conerly's pinned his guy inside. So nice work on that one with the down block. So he can down block, which is good. In the commander zone scheme, you do need to be able to down block, but you also need to be able to pull. And I talked about GT counter schemes. That's one of the commander's favorites, and he has experience running that. So this is an example of that. So both the left guard and Conerly at left tackle are going to pull. The guard's going to pull and kick out the defensive end here, and then Conerly's going to pull and wrap around for this linebacker who's going to try to scrape over the top. And you'll see he looks smooth pulling, no issues getting out of his stance, running across. He's not rushed like, oh, I need to really make up ground quickly. He's playing within himself. He identifies his target here as he pulls around the edge. You can see he quickly locks into the linebacker and he's okay, that's my obvious block. You can see the lane developing inside here. You can see these guys crashing that inside, and this linebacker's got a lot of work to do. And Conerly does a nice job getting low, kicking him out. And the running back has a nice lane to work with inside, and they get a nice gain out of it. So that's smooth pulling on a GT counter scheme. This is a slightly different scheme. This is a tackle like power or tackle trap play. So he's pulling again, but he's the only one pulling, and he's actually going to go and block this linebacker rather than kick out anyone. So they're going to. I think the guard washes down inside and the tackle splits outside, and Conerly wraps around and blocks this linebacker who's going to try to run through the middle of the defense. And you see this is an important block, but it's a good one. He pulls, makes that block here, and you can see the running back immediately is like, okay, I've got a lane here. Make that cut inside behind him. He does a nice job staying engaged, resetting his hands after the impact of the initial block, stuns the guy. He then replaces his hands and gains control of the block and starts driving back even further. keeps him engaged, and the running back's able to run through and nearly gets a touchdown from it. So.
And one thing, Mark, that I kind of observed from this, we talked about athleticism. I feel like he carries his body very well, right? He's a big, bulky 6'5", 310, 320, but at the same time, his body is like shaped proportionally, if that makes any sense. Like he's fleet-footed, he can run, he's like an athlete. And I think it's going to be very powerful in Cliff Kingsbury's offense on these GT counter pulls you're talking about, on screen plays. He seems to get up the field pretty easily.
Yeah, he's a very, very fluid mover, very easy mover, very smooth. It doesn't look difficult for him, as you say, which is a big part of the appeal to him. Is he's a really good athlete. He really moves well, and he can block in space as well, which we'll see a bit of shortly. But that athleticism, we've seen it on pulling. We talked about like Commanders run a lot of GT counter stuff and stuff where they require linemen to pull, and obviously Conerly can do that. But they do sometimes run some zone, and this is a zone scheme run. And the tackle on the backside of a zone scheme, typically this would be trying to reach and cut off a defensive tackle that is probably on the outside shoulder of the guard rather than the inside shoulder. So this is kind of an extra bit of difficulty. This is one of the harder blocks to reach just because he's got so much distance to try to make up. Like this would be the gap that he would typically have to cover. He's having to try to get across almost two gaps to cover this defensive tackle. Or the nose tackle, really. Now, the nose tackle helps a little bit by kind of stunting a little bit towards him, but you can see he still has the athletic ability to come out of his stance quickly, get across the face of the defender, and reach him, and then see them off on the backside. The rest of the run doesn't really work out, but he does a nice job. So you'll see it here. Steps across real quick, gets level with the defender real quick, and then is able to turn his hips and flip around and seal that defender off on the backside. And you can see the lane that would be created there. The separation between this is the nose tackle, is the linebacker, this is the other defensive tackle. So you can see the gap that they've created between the two defensive tackles is huge. Unfortunately, they don't get the blocks in here to really make it work. But that displacement created between the two defensive tackles, when you have a left tackle that's able to reach a nose tackle and seal him off, that is huge. Like I can't emphasize enough. Like the gap between this defensive tackle and this defensive tackle is massive. If this guy makes that block, this could be a home run, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So unfortunately, he can't make that block, and the running back has nowhere to go, and they don't get much out of it. But it's impressive nonetheless, the athletic ability. So he's scheme diverse in the run game. You can run, if you want to just run a bunch of zone, especially now that they have 5 really good athletes, and I think that's an underrated part of this. Is Laramie Tunsil's a really good athlete. Brandon Coleman's a really good athlete at left guard. Tyler Bionish is a really good athlete at center. Sam Cosme, I think, almost had like the #1 RAS score.
100%.
Yeah. So he's an excellent athlete. And now Conerly playing right tackle. You've got 5 excellent athletes, and they're all very scheme flexible. So if you want to run a bunch of zone scheme on one week against a team that's weak against zone, whether they're not athletic enough or whether they have a front that's particularly weak against zone, you can run zone. If you want to run the GT counter stuff that they did last year a bunch, because you have maybe a smaller, lighter defense that's trying to set up against the pass, and you want to just try to run it down their throat, you can do that too. So they have the athletes to do that, and that really brings a lot of scheme flexibility to them, and more so than what they had last year, especially now that Conerly, the projection is Conerly moves to right tackle and Coleman moves into left guard, and that means Nick Allegretti, who was probably the least athletic lineman of the group, not that he was a terrible athlete, but he wasn't the prototypical zone scheme guard, and he wasn't great in space, he wasn't great climbing to the second level, whereas Coleman is very good at that type of stuff. Suddenly you can run a lot of very diverse zone or gap scheme runs. You can basically run whatever you want to run.
And to that end, Mark, I think it's almost like a telltale sign that they're still invested in running back, in my opinion. I feel like they're, getting an explosive running back, someone that could be a slasher, that could maybe hit a hole, hit it hard. I think that's potentially down the pike. And there's some good ones on the board right now, too.
Yep, sure. I would say it's going to improve the run game for anyone that's back there. So they could make the argument that Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler weren't horrific, and they'd be better with an improved offensive line.
Fair
if
enough.
You can get a home run hitter to add into that mix, then great. If not, I think they'll be improved anyway. And then we'll just finish off with that athletic ability in the screen game. So we've got a couple of screens here. This is a wide receiver tunnel screen. We saw a bunch of these with Washington last year. I think Cliff Kingsbury probably had the highest tunnel screen rate in the history of the NFL with what they did last year. And Conerly at left tackle is going to be a key part of that. For Washington, it'll be a right tackle. So just imagine this is mirrored and flipped, but it's the same idea. They're gonna pull the ball and immediately throw a tunnel screen out to this receiver who's going to come back inside. You're going to have this receiver try to block this guy, and then Conerly's going to block the first guy that you can come across here. So we'll run it through, take the jet sweep, run that tunnel screen, and now you got Conerly getting out in space, gets in front of the guy, engages in the block, steals him inside. This receiver doesn't do the greatest job of exploding out of this catch and getting up the field, but he's able to run away from that guy, and Conerly keeps his guy engaged. This is really hard to do in space, is to stay engaged with a guy that's running to the sideline, that's a better athlete than you. He stays engaged and keeps him blocked. And again, if this receiver had a bit more explosiveness, if this is Deebo Samuel or Terry McLaurin, he's probably already past this guy. But it's still a good job at the ability to block in space. You'll see it here. He does a nice job of swimming over the defensive end here, faking that he's blocking and then getting away, getting out in front, quickly getting up to the linebacker. At this point, this is excellent. You can't ask for better than this position. You just need that receiver to be more explosive and get up the field. And unfortunately, the blocks inside made him kind of have to widen a little bit more. But it's good work from Conerly.
Mark, quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I got a question in the chat. I know it's kind of hard to make comparisons, especially on the fly, because your mind might not be there right now. But Colin Duffrey, in front of the show, said, "Hey guys, great job. Landon Dickerson was drafted at a similar spot in the draft to Conerly. Can you please compare them as prospects generally and the completeness of them, ceiling, so on and so forth?" Do you feel comfortable answering that right now, or do you want to kind of reflect later on? Or get back to Colin?
Dickerson is not a guy that I studied particularly coming out of the draft. Okay. So I couldn't really compare them personally. I don't doubt Colin, especially Colin, does a lot of work with the numbers and stuff like that. So I'm sure that they are very comparable in that sense, but he's just not someone that I am particularly familiar with what he was like in college. So I probably couldn't make that comparison. So I think this is the last play I've got here. This is just one more screen. This time we saw a tunnel screen to the receiver. This time it's a slow screen to the running back to the right side. So Coleman's at left tackle. He's on the back side of this, but he actually makes a key block on this. So he's going to act like it's a zone play where he's walking down the line, and he's going to try to sneak out late and then try to seal off someone inside. So we'll see it here. Walk down the line like he's blocking inside, kind of pause a little bit and be like, what am I doing? He can't get too far out in front. There's the penalty for being illegal man downfield if they complete that pass with him down the field. So he does a nice job being patient, staying within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage. That ball finally gets caught, and then he's turning upfield, and then he's looking inside for his targets. You can see he scanned outside first, but he's got two guys out in front with him, so he knows he has to scan back inside. He finds his target. He goes and makes the block in space. He pauses and redirects back, cuts that guy off, seals him off, and that creates a real nice lane. You've got a big lane and the wall inside sealed off. This is exactly how you'd want a screen set up.
Absolutely.
And you can just think this would be, possibly Deebo Samuel or Austin Eckler or, whatever running back possibly they might draft. Being in this kind of space, this would be huge. I don't think this guy makes the most of it, but they still pick up an explosive play on that. So yeah, that is Josh Conerly. I think he's a really, really good prospect. I think he has huge upside, extremely athletic, great feet, and not just athletically speaking great feet. Like, he's got quick feet, but he's also got diversity of skill set with his sets, being able to get vertical, being able to get width, being able to mix it up and quick set guys and do one steps, then quick sets and stuff like that. And that requires, a good understanding of the game and techniques, but also the quickness of feet, the athletic ability to stop and start. And he's really good at that, and that gives him huge upside as a tackle. I think the hands are really good. The timing of punches is excellent. As we saw, there was a number of reps in there where you could see he lands strong punches and he times them really well. When he sees an exposed chest, he can close that gap quickly and land a powerful strike to disrupt those rushes. You see the techniques to be able to handle different types of rushes as well, with his hand fighting and being able to separate his hands, be independent hand usage, so that he's got a hand ready to recover if his one hand gets knocked away. So I think there's a real complete package as a pass protector. The only question, as we talked about, was the strength, and I think that's something that will come as he gets in an NFL weight room, an NFL training program, and but beef up his lower body a little bit and put on some more muscle. I think that'll come. So I think he's a really, really well-rounded prospect. I really like the pick. The more this offseason went on, I thought more about the idea of drafting a tackle. When they traded for Tunsil, I was like, okay, that's not going to happen now. But when I thought about it more and more, I was like, well, Tunsil upgrades you at left tackle, but if you then go and draft another stud at right tackle, you can move Coleman inside the left guard. And then you've got 5 really good athletes, 5 really well set guys, and a real nice mix of, Tunsil's a little bit older, Biadish and Cosme are kind of getting into their prime. They're in their mid to late 20s. And then you've got 2 younger guys in Coleman and Conerly that are just drafted. So you've got a real nice mix that can set you up for the next few years. But then you've got the younger guys that will be in place to take over as the stalwarts of the line when the older guys eventually have to move on. So I think it's a really good move. It really future-proofs the offensive line, and it makes the strength of the team even stronger. And it does the main objective of the offseason, which is to build around Jaden Daniels and make sure Jaden Daniels is the number one guy in this town for a long time.
Absolutely. And Mark, kudos to you. I was actually watching the breakdown. I work with you every week, but I was sitting here today. I was like, man, it's such a comprehensive, thorough, well thought out breakdown you had today. It was great. You did the hand usage. You showed him out in space. You showed his deficits as well. My takeaway from the video clips were he has a very high floor. I mean, I think he has a very high ceiling as well. I think he has the potential to be one of the better tackles in the league, to be honest, just from his athleticism. But it seems like even his deficits of not necessarily being strong, he was providing, ample protection for his quarterback. Was it ideal? Was it elite when he messed up and when he was pushed back? Maybe not, but he still provided time for Dylan Gabriel to throw the ball. So I feel like it's a great pick. And as you kind of alluded to, it provides flexibility moving forward. Just like you, I think we were going into this cycle, maybe edge, wide receiver, cornerback we were talking about in the first round. But I think all of us would have been happy about solidifying the O-line. It protects our investment with Jaden Daniels, and it's going to improve both our running and passing game. That being said, we're getting into the second and third round today. There's some good prospects on the board, Mark. I don't know if you looked ahead at all. I can read off a couple of names for you if you'd like, or I can let it just kind of throw you the blank slate. But looking in the second and third round, what are you looking for? I mean, we only have one pick as of now, so
yeah, I think that's the thing, is that I think there's a lot of good guys on the board. There's a lot of guys I didn't expect to be there. I didn't think there'd be quite so many edge rushers and corners still there. Like Will Johnson being there, it's almost scary. You think there's a medical red flag there, and I know there was some medical concerns with him, but I didn't think he'd fall out of the first round due to them. So maybe those are a little bit worse than you thought. Donovan Ezaraku would obviously, I would have been pretty happy with him being the pick yesterday. If he would have somehow fall to 61, I don't see. But maybe a trade up or some sort of trade happens and they're able to flip picks or something and go up and get him. Or maybe he does just fall. Maybe the strength of this class helps someone surprisingly fall. We talked about running backs. Travion Henderson, I think I've said on this show, is the first guy I watched this year that just screamed Washington Commander to me. And so I think a part of the fan base would be screaming about not drafting defense if they went tackle and then running back. But I think Henderson would be very good value at 61.
He's a unifier. Everybody wants Trey Henderson, to be honest with you. But continue though. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So and then there's quarterbacks. Like I talked about Will Johnson. Like if he's there at 61, like again, I'd be worried about the medical red flag that has caused him to go there. But the talent might be just too much to pass up on at that point. Trey Amos would be a really good pick if he were to fall. I don't think he'll be on the board that long. Who else
there's plenty, Mark. It was funny because
Yeah.
you and I and a bunch of us have done deep dives in the draft class. I pulled up like the next available 25, next available 50. There's like 2 or 3 people out of that next 25 that I'd be upset with, right? There's Trey Amos, there's Jaden Higgins, there's Trey Harris, there's Jalen Noel. There's so many players on the board. So I think Washington has a pretty safe landing spot moving forward.
Yep. Agreed.
Cool. All right. So once again, guys, thank you for watching us today. We had 1,663 people tune into us live. So thank you for joining us. As always, follow Mark Bullock on Twitter. Follow his Substack. He's at Mark Bullock NFL on X. You should definitely give him a follow. Definitely follow his Substack as well. We'll put that in the chat so you guys can follow along with that. Mark, I'm sure, we'll be in touch. Maybe we'll do our second and third round breakdowns pretty soon. We'll get that ahead as moving forward. And that's about it, guys. Have a great night watching the show. I'm George Carmi. Have a great night. Peace.